Welcome to another installment of Creating an Art Journal page. Today we're going to be making our own medium to use on our page to accent our design. Now, this is what you'll need for your supplies. Obviously, page in your art journal. I'm using watercolor paper. I make my own, so that's why you see just a sheet here. You will need acrylic paint in several colors. I have 5 here. It's just what I pulled out, but you can do what you want, colors to make what you want. Stencils. I have a couple here. You don't need all these. 1 or 2 stencils would also work. You need gesso, archival ink, or solvent ink, excuse me, because we will be using some wet mediums. Using the solvent ink means that when you add water or paint, your image is going to be there. It will not run. You need gel medium. You need microbeads. Now, I don't know about you, but I have bottles and bottles and bottles of these things, and I don't use them. And what we're using today is we're going to mix them with our glass gel, and we're going to actually make homemade bead gel. You can buy bead gel, but then if you're not going to use it all the time, it's just going to sit there and eventually it'll get hard and you'll throw it away. And that stuff is expensive. I always have gel medium on hand. I can make my own, and that's what we're going to do today. And we're actually going to tint it with some more acrylic paint as well. Book text, scrapbook paper, something with a pattern. I'm actually using this tissue paper, the Christy Tomlinson tissue paper, coffee filter paper. I like the text on it. It's going to be perfect for what we're going to do. And then you need a piece of scrap paper. Doesn't matter what it looks like. Heavier weight will do because of the technique that we're going to need. A palette knife, paper towel or foam brush, both if you want, and a black marker. And I'm going to use a Sharpie pen. I like these super fine Sharpie pens that they have. They write on everything, and I love the line. The line thickness is just perfect for what I need. So those are your supplies for what you need. Oh, you also need a little bowl so when we go to mixing up our stuff, our bead gel. And background stamps if you have them. And those are your supplies. Great, so we're going to begin our page. Now here, what we have is just my art journal page, and I do bind my books later, so I like working free. And I'm going to do a single page today. Sometimes, you know, if you've joined me in the past, we'll do double page, but your pages don't always line up. You can't always have double page entries, so we're doing a single page today. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to take my tissue paper and I'm going to take my gel medium and I'm just going to start putting the tissue paper onto my page. You can use a glue stick. You can, depending on the weight, you can use other paper. I'm just using gel medium because I already have it out anyway. And I'm just going to put down the edges. And I tore my strips up a little because I like what we're going to do later on. I like to have the, I just like the, not having the full text being through. I like to have the mismatched pieces. And I'm just going to cover up the entire page. Put some this way. I like this tissue paper. It goes down real easy. And I'm just, again, covering my entire page with the text. You could use book text. So again, I'm just going through, covering my whole page with the book text. This is going to be our base. But again, I'm using this tissue paper. You could use a patterned scrapbook paper. The thing is, you want a pattern on the back. You could use phone book paper. You know, I don't know about you, but we keep getting phone books on our front porch, and I haven't used a phone book in years, but they make great additions to your craft pages, your art journal pages, whatever. You can use book text. You can even go around and stamp along the background if you really wanted to. And there, I've just covered my entire page with the text. Put that away. And we're going to add a thin layer of gesso here. Now I'm saying thin because and I'm actually using the same brush, because we want our pattern to show through. I'm just going to put a little on. And if I think it looks too thick, I'll wipe some up. Again, I'm not trying to hide the pattern, I'm just trying to mute it down a little. And that was real quick. I mean, spread it out, and I will let this dry now, but this is just, our page has been covered with the tissue paper, book text, whatever, and covered then with a very light layer of gesso. So you see that you can still see the pattern through, but you kind of have to really look to see what it is. And it just provides a even base for us to do our work on. While my gel medium and gesso layer is drying, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my piece of scrap paper, and I'm actually going to cut a few stars out. And I've already done that. All I did was freehand drew some stars. I probably cut out more than I'm planning on using, but I like to have extra just in case. And there's several different sizes, shapes. If you have a die cut, you don't like how to draw, so you don't like your stars, you can use a die cut machine, but you'll need several of them. We're making homemade masks here to work on our page. So cut some stars out of your piece of scrap paper. And again, heavier weight is better because we are going to put paint over them. So my paint is dry, and I've cut my stars out, and I've just laid them down, going down the side of the page. You can put them wherever you want on your page. I'm going to do it down the side, and I'm going to have my sentiment over here. If you have repositional adhesive, you can use that to hold the stars. Extra step, I don't usually do it. I'll just hold them down as I go over with my paint. So I'm going to take my paint colors, and I'm just going to put a squirt out. And if I need more, I can always come back and get more. All right, and so we're just going to start here, and I'm going to use a foam brush. And I'm just going to start going over my page. And again, I'm going to hold my star down. And even if some paint gets underneath, it's okay, because we're going to go back in later on and we'll clean it up. Just going on. And I'm not really thinking about blending here. I want different pops of color in different spots. If I put two colors next to each other that aren't gonna mix, I might let them dry, but I want to work quick here, so I'm just too much. And in some places I'm putting less paint than others. By doing so, again, we're still letting that text come through. Just gonna put some pink on here for now. You could obviously do this in one color. I'm just going for a lot of color right now. So we've covered our page with paint, and I'm gonna let this dry completely before we go on. My paint for the most part is now dry, and I'm gonna pull out one of my background stamps in my solvent ink, and I'm not even putting this on a block or anything. I'm just gonna kind of stamp over, and I still have my masks in place, my little star masks, so that they're blocking the images from being stamped on. Okay. I'm actually going to use just a script stamp as well. All about adding more and more layers. Okay, so we're going to set that aside. We're going to put our ink away. And now I've done just about everything I'm going to do with my stars in place, and I'm going to take them off, and hopefully I'll have star shapes still. Yay. All right, so there we have some stars. And I'm just going to trim up my edges a few places where it's overhanging, just because now it's starting to bother me. So I have my stars. I trim my edges, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going back and getting my sponge again, and I'm using one of my little stencils, and I'm just adding, kind of putting it where where I don't have any stars. I'm trying to see where I don't have any stars. And I'm just adding a little more pattern. I'll set that aside. Just gonna let this all dry. And while it dries, we are gonna make our homemade bead gel. Now, like I said, you can buy bead gel. But you can't get small amounts of it. You get big jars of it. And if it's not something you're going to use a lot, it's going to go to waste. And it's kind of expensive to go to waste. I always have gel medium. I'm going to make my own bead gel. I'm going to take my palette knife or spatula, and I'm just going to put a small amount into a little bowl. Just like that. Not a lot. I don't need a lot. Put that on the side, and I'm going to take my beads, my little micro beads. You can use colored, clear, white, whatever. If you're like me, you have a lot to choose from. And I'm just going, they're already going everywhere. And I'm just going to take them and pour some in. And now when this dries, you can use it as clear if you want. Put some more in. And when it dries, it'll just have all sparkle and have a lot of texture. Or like what we're going to do, we're adding paint to our medium. And you'll be amazed at how quickly a drop or two of paint will really color this. So here we are, we're mixing it up. Okay, so it's all mixed up. You have beads everywhere. And what I'm going to do is I'm just taking Prussian blue hue. I want a dark color for this. And look at 2 drops. And already. So if you don't have a palette knife, use a spatula. And I'm going to add until I'm happy with the color. Just like when you're making a cake, scrape the sides. And I'm gonna make that. So there is our bead gel that we have tinted. Get that to mix that up. That we've tinted with our acrylic paint, and you can make it as light or as dark as you want. There you can see it. You can see the beads in there. And we're going to pull out our page again. Page is completely dry, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this stencil right here, and I'm going to use this one. And I'm just going to put it on, and we're not using the whole thing. We're just adding kind of accents to our page. I'm just going to scoop it up on the back of my knife. And just like frosting a cake, go over the page. You don't need to have a real thick layer because it will dry quicker if you don't. Lift up my stencil. Oh, sweet. And I'm going to turn my page around, and I'm actually going to add a little up here. Again, thin layer, kind of scraping it across like frosting a cake. And let's put that up. Put some over here where there's no star. And down here, because I'm a 4 corners kind of person. And this is neat. When it's spread thin too, you can really see the beads that are in it. It's going to give you some really cool texture, and the beads will catch the light as well. And you could also, like I said, you could not color it, and then when it dries, color it. But there's our homemade bead gel on our art journal page. Now I'm going to let this dry completely. I'm not going to put my heat gun on it just because I don't want to mess up sometimes when you put the heat gun on the gel medium, it might bubble up, and I don't want to do that. I'm going to let this dry completely, and I will be back. And while I'm gone, almost forgot, just go make sure you clean off your stencil and your palette knife really quick. You don't want this to dry on here. You know, I don't usually clean my stencils, but when using certain mediums, you gotta clean them. Our bead gel is all dry now, so we're going to move on to our next step. We're going to take our black pen. Like I said, I'm using a Sharpie Fine Line. I like them. They write on just about anything, but all I'm doing is I'm going to define my star. And I'm not being real particular about it. I'm actually using a few scratchy shapes or a few scratchy lines to make it stand out more. And I'm just going through and getting all of them. And this is why, even if you had a little bit of paint seep under your star mask, it doesn't matter, because you can go over it with the pen and it all comes and works. And if you had a spot where you really went over, like, you could always break out your gesso again and just kind of go in with a fine tip paintbrush. But there we go. So we have our dried bead gel, we have our stars that we've now outlined, and you can see the text, because there's just a layer of gesso over them. There's the text that's just starting to come through. I'm just going to add a few little circles. I have a circle stamp here, and I'm just going to go through and add them. I like this stamp. Ooh, my StazOn is drying out. And when I use the solvent ink too, it will stamp over the gel medium, our glass bead gel mix that we made. It stamps over the paint, it'll stamp over just about anything and then be permanent. If you used a pigment ink, it would just rub right off, or a dye ink, it wouldn't dry on your gel medium. Okay. And while we're at it, I'm just going to take my ink again, just because I like to go along. I always like going along my edges. And all we have left is to put the sentiment on. All we have left now is to just add our little quote, sentiment, whatever you want to put on here. And I just put dream and catch a star. Now you can use letter stickers, rub-on stamps. I printed it out on heavyweight copy paper and just put it down. And I'm just going to take my black pen again, and to kind of make it stand out. And you notice I don't worry too much about going straight lines or any of that, because I find that if I do worry about the straight lines, I am never ever going to make them. I have a hard enough time making straight lines with a ruler. Never mind eyeballing it. But there, and of course, sign your page. But here we go. Dream and catch a star. And this is with our homemade